So welcome everyone to the 2001 Ben Auburn Award in Cultural Criticism Symposium. It's my honor to welcome you to this event. I'm Dane Quinn. I am the acting dean in the Williams Honors College, and this is one of my favorite events of the year. It really highlights some of the wonderful creativity that our students possess. And so a little bit about the award. Let's see if that, there we go. Some words on the slide, right? I'm going to try not to read this, but I'll tell you a little bit about the award. So this award was established by Mark, Sandy, and David Auburn in memory of their son Ben, who was passionate about cultural criticism. Mark and Sandy are longtime members of the University of Akron community. Mark and Sandy, I don't want to ask you when you started, but how long were you on campus in your official roles?
Well, let's see. My first connection to the University of Akron is as a member of the president's family, and it starts in 1951. I become a regular student at the University of Akron in 1963, and I graduate in 67. Sandy, when did you become associated with the University of Akron?
I came to the University of Akron as a transfer student in the middle of my sophomore year in 1965, received my bachelor's in 1967 and my master's degree in 1968, both in speech language pathology and audiology.
Then we went away from Akron for 24 years, and we returned in 1991. And I returned as senior vice president and provost, subsequently dean of the College of Fine and Applied Arts, a college which no longer exists, and retired in 2006. Sandy's career is as checkered as mine, and I'll let you follow with that, Sandy.
Well, I earned a PhD from The Ohio State University in Columbus in 1978 in speech language pathology, and then spent the rest of my career in various organizations in the communities in which we lived, running not-for-profit organizations and working in state government in one case, and frequently serving as an adjunct professor at the universities in the various communities in which we lived.
Important for the participating students to understand is just a little bit more about Ben Auburn. He was our son. He was born on leap year day 1972, and he died on January 10th, 2000. At his death, Ben was an internet editor, which was a very new kind of thing with The Atlantic. That was one of a series of jobs that he had since graduating from Oberlin College in 1994. And the reason he was passionate about cultural criticism, I'm not certain. He was a performer, a writer, a musician, and if he had, at age 27 when he died, a really clear kind of future to conquer, it would have been to get paid enough for the music criticism that he was writing to make a life by it. An important thing for everyone to understand is that Ben died as a result of complications of the flu. We've had a lot of attention for the past 15 months on one kind of flu with a very high percentage of complications. Ben's flu was just that year's regular influenza, and it was a year at which, despite the efforts of his loving parents, he didn't get inoculated. So I want you to keep in mind that the flower of youth can be struck down anytime by influenza. Always treat it seriously, not just in times of COVID. That's enough about Ben. We are so happy we were able to establish this award, and we want to give you our great thanks for meeting in his honor today.
Mark and Sandy, thank you for those words and remembrances of Ben. This award, in fact, is often referred to as the Ben. So it is very much in his memory that we hold this. As I mentioned, and as you heard Mark and Sandy speak, Ben was involved in cultural criticism. And that's really what this award is meant to foster and recognize and celebrate. And from our perspective, cultural criticism is not criticism as critique, but more criticism as a reflection, as a recognition of the trends of society, right? How those trends are evolving, and the different emphasis that our culture places on its varied aspects. This year in particular, with COVID, we thought that we would add in an additional aspect of this, and in particular, we decided to focus on community in the time of pandemic. Our community has changed over the past year. But community is not simply where you live, right? It's not the neighborhood that you live in. It's not the streets that you drive in. It is, but it's so much more than that. It's the people that surround you. It's the places that you go. It's your interactions with the world that again surrounds you. And one of the things that we wanted to kind of highlight was the different experiences that different communities have. And again, it's not just your neighborhood, but really it's that, well, kind of to think about it in COVID terms, it's your bubble. It's the people that you surround yourself with, the people that you interact with. And as important, it's the people that interact with your bubble. So we really wanted to ask questions about how different communities are responding and how they view themselves in this most unique time. So we have a panel of wonderful judges, and I'd like to take just a second to introduce those. John Huss is a professor here at the University of Akron, formerly in the Honors College, and it was under John's leadership that we revitalized and restarted this Ben Auburn Award in Cultural Criticism. So he has agreed to join us and serve as one of our judges. Another judge from the University of Akron is Heather Pollock. She has many different hats. Heather, are you here in Akron today?
I am. I'm at my house.
You are traveling. Are you're soon to be at a conference?
Yes, yes. It's Zoom.
Heather has many different hats here at the university, including one of our favorite instructors in our honors colloquium courses. She's also the director of study abroad here at the University of Akron. And then we actually have this year 2 judges from outside the uakron.edu domain, we'll say. One is formerly from the campus, Jackson Gaggi, who is currently a client district manager at ADP in Pittsburgh. But more importantly, he is a 2-time winner of the Ben Auburn Award in cultural criticism. So we thought we'd bring him back and let him see the other side of things. And then finally, I'm happy to welcome Shamus Malik. Shamus is a child of Akron, the University of Akron. His mother was on faculty here for a number of years, and I think I first met him in the parking lot under the Auburn building, running around from the car. I think he and his brother had a soccer ball, which is probably why I said hello. But he is currently Ward 8 City Councilman for the city of Akron. And Shamus, we'd like to thank you for spending part of your day here with us today.
So glad to be here.
So without further ado, let me introduce our student presenters today. First off, I'd like to welcome Matea Martz. She is a criminal intelligence analyst major. She graduates in the fall of 2021, and she is currently an intern with the United States Marshal Service, president-elect for the Criminal Justice Association, vice president-elect for the Ohio Innocence Project. And following graduation, she has aspirations of law school here at Akron, starting in the spring of 2022. So, Matea, would you like to share your screen and give us your presentation?
Yes. I'm gonna make sure to get on the right page real quick. Okay. So, is it in slideshow mode? I can't tell.
It's not. We see the title bar and all the other stuff. There we go.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Awesome. So my essay that I submitted for this award was on loss and fear in the time of pandemic. So when I was a child, I was labeled fearless, and this is me. 8 years old, I sang on stage. I did all the talent shows, all the activities at school. I would take my calculated impulses and I would run with them, keeping a certain regard for my safety and others' safety, but I did as I pleased. And I knew love everywhere, whether that be from my mother's arms, the teachers in my classroom, to a homeless man in the street. I didn't fear others. I didn't fear a handshake, a person in my personal space, and I didn't even fear sharing a cup with my best friend. Now, obviously, that has changed drastically since the pandemic hit in March. Now, I will say that fear did start to trickle into my life around 11 years old, and I went into this pandemic with a healthy fear of death. I was 11 years old when I lost my uncle from an accident when he was 46. 17, my aunt from stage 4 lung cancer when she was 50. 18, my grandma from a pulmonary embolism at 73. And during the pandemic, I have lost 2 more. My boyfriend at 19 years old in a car accident when he was 18. And my other grandma at 20 to COVID at age 61. These people were people that I love more than life itself. And I know loss so intimately that fear started to permeate my existence ever so slowly. And death seemed to loom over me in a personal rain cloud that rained down memories of funerals, lost time, and devastation. And I never could have possibly imagined that this rain cloud would expand worldwide, and I wouldn't be alone because of the loss I have endured, but because I couldn't be within 6 feet of someone to talk about it. COVID-19 has obviously permeated our existence as a whole. And I have never known fear so deeply. I am deeply scared of this disease that has made me scared of others. The mantras of stay 6 feet away, wear your mask, and social distance have been prescribed safety that have instilled within our culture a loveless fear of others. I'm sick with fear if I'm in public for too long, too many people too close, and too sick with a viral infection that could take another person from me, another person from my supervisor, my internship, my best friend, and my neighbor if I'm not safe enough. And in this struggle, it's intimately difficult because you know if If you've lost someone, you know that life is short, but you must live it. But how are you going to live it fully with the bubbles of distance, permanent nationwide rain clouds, and restrictions? And if you don't follow those restrictions, how can you live with yourself if you're not doing your best to protect others? And within this pandemic, I have seen a lack of togetherness, as we've seen it before. It's permeated our culture like loss has permeated my soul. Neighbors won't be borrowing a cup of sugar for a recipe they need, instead offering distant nods from across yards and eyes ahead to the next thing. Friends will no longer gather in solace over shared movie interests, instead over FaceTime. Lovers will be stripped of outings at restaurants and confined into chatting inside of dating apps or over video games. Families will no longer be able to celebrate birthdays or grieve at funerals because they can't be near each other. Grocery store lines are measured 6 feet apart. And if you touch the same sugar as the person before you, then you need to immediately wash your hands of the mere existence of them in fear that they'll end yours. Strangers won't stop on the side of the road to aid in fixing tire. They will rush past you, giving the sign of the cross as they keep their eyes ahead on the road. And professors will no longer hide live lecture, but students will still pay a full tuition price for a lack of community and a lack of education. In most cases, I've been quite lucky with my semester this semester, but the online classes. And I found that this rain cloud of loss has left us lacking in love, something I have found to be life's greatest gift that can no longer be bestowed upon us in the way that we knew. Instead, fear of others has replaced majority of our normalcy and has caused a lot of hatred between us, as seen in the many movements and horrific acts that have been on the news. And I despite all of this, I still have a shred of hope, and I still have pride in my community. What they can do in this time, I'm proud of the people sending fruit baskets to those who just lost their grandma in lieu of a funeral. And I am proud of the nurses being there for COVID patients in the ways they can. I'm proud of the neighbors leaving positive notes on doorsteps and the graduation parades help for new graduates. I'm proud of the professors who are there anytime at a WebEx meeting to talk. I'm proud for what we can do while we're stuck in this rain cloud. I'm proud of what can be done. I'm proud of humanity for still trying with what spark they have left. And I still find love left. That's my puppy. He's a pandemic puppy. His name is Bruner, which was my boyfriend's last name. And I just want to say, trust me, 20 years old, and I'm intimate with the thought of trying despite hardship, and I'm proud of the persistence that humanity has offered during the last year. And I just hope that what tendrils that left of love can be sparked back into full force once we are safe again. I'm day 2 past my second vaccine. My mom is day 1 past her second vaccine. We're going to be fully vaccinated soon. We have a lot of hope despite everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. That was wonderful. We will now give judges and participant or audience members an opportunity to ask questions, respond in any way that they feel appropriate.
Hi, I just have a comment. I was a first responder during the pandemic. I switched to an MA now, and thank you so much for verbalizing that. I feel like a lot of people don't understand that cloud of darkness when watching so many people die during such a dark time.
My sister's best friend's a nurse. She was there when my boyfriend was in his accident. She's COVID. She's an ER nurse. She's a COVID nurse, and yeah, you guys go through a lot.
I just wanted to say, as someone else who lost a lot of important people, when they were younger, I'm so proud of you for sharing this. I know how hard it can be. So I just want to let you know, I'm really proud of you and sending all my love your way.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I can jump in really quickly.
Yeah.
As your professor this semester in both my hero class and the culture of fear, I see both of those threads kind of combining in the work you've done here. You've done incredible work this semester, and it goes without saying, but on top of all the barriers to the normal sense of connection that we faced, you've really come into your womanhood. This is a big deal. You've faced down some things that are way more adult than you probably should have had to contend with, but you've done so with grace, and that's clear in your presentation here today too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
your classes were definitely inspiration for the fear and the heroism in my presentation, and in general in life.
Thanks.
So if I can ask, as Heather pointed out, you've been through way more than anyone at any age should probably have to go through. How do you think you'll take that into the future going forward? How will your outlook change? Has that led to a new direction in what your goals are?
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, I would like to say at first I'm writing a novel. I'm writing down the story of me and my boyfriend. Like I said, he was 18 years old. It was very unexpected, and losing someone that you choose is a different loss than someone that you're blood related to. So I wanted to make that a little bit more, like, you know, apparent. And I talk about my grandma, my aunt, and everybody else too in the story, and it's changed my outlook on family for sure. I'm career driven, that's for sure, but I am not quite so adamant about, like, I'm going to work 80 hours a week and I'm going to have all this money in a huge house. I have my family a lot closer to me now. I decided to go to law school so I could have a steady line of work that made me happy, and I could fight for what's right still, and still have, you know, kids that my mom gets to see, and that allow my sister to be an aunt, you know, and to have that kind of love. Because what I've taken with me from my losses is that, you know, love is the greatest gift of all, and it's along with your time that you give to others. So that is what I strive for in my life, is to give as much love as possible and to receive it as well.
Mattia?
Yeah.
We, Sandy and I, have been privileged to remain close to our son Ben's widow. He was married for only 4 months when he died, and his widow had also lost her only sibling within the same 4-month period. I want to say to you that one of the great comforts that Charlotte found was the ability to talk with others who had lost folks, particularly spouses. And I would counsel you not only to use your creativity to make sense of this, but to share your experiences with others who have also faced it. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm still in contact with my boyfriend's family. I talk to them. I go down there and visit his little sisters once a month, and the rest of his family. We were close. So yeah, I still keep that connection. But thank you.
Mattia, it was a really powerful presentation. I think that as someone who also lost my mother around your age, I think that, you know, we don't do a good job of grieving in public as a society, and that's one through line of this pandemic that you kind of illustrated, is that it gives us a way of recognizing each other's humanity, because we all have to deal with this kind of collective loss. But I just really appreciate, you know, kind of how powerfully you framed it, and I think that, you know, would love to read your book someday.
Thank you. Yeah, I've realized that it's not widely spoken about, and before everything that's happened, you know, loss was taboo. I mean, I was 11 when I lost my uncle, and I didn't even know how to process it, let alone talk about it, which led to anxiety and other fears that I stashed away with me as I grew older and just pushed it down. But I've learned that the best thing you can do is talk and spread awareness. So thank you.
I wanted to say great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm actually a question of advice. I think it's kind of, as discussed, very difficult to discuss loss and fear. How do you find the courage to keep fighting, to, you know, go through all that loss and yet still be positive and encouraging?
Well, I was raised Catholic. Not like, I find faith. I'm not I'm not like solely a church follower. I'm a faith follower, and I found faith in just the amazing things that I've seen despite my pain. There's still babies getting born every day, and marriages that are full of love, and there's still so many amazing things still happening. And what I've realized is that if no one talks about it, if I'm not going to talk about it, who is going to? When I lost my grandma, none of my friends want to talk to me anymore. Like they didn't know how to talk to me. They're like, "Oh, you're damaged. That's not fair." To anybody, because it's not a taboo topic. It happens to everybody. Everyone's gonna lose throughout your life, so it needs to just be spoken about. And I find the courage from the love that I had, and the love that I someday hope to have again. So, thank you.
I wanted to say thank you for your presentation. I took some notes of some of the wonderful phrases that you used. I like the idea of rain cloud of loss. And I also like the idea of the things that you were proud of what we can do when we can't do anything. I thought that was especially a powerful statement. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Humanity does what, we go through a lot, but we still rise in the end. You'll be surprised to see how stubborn we are.
Okay, well, again, thank you. Thank you, Matea, for that wonderful presentation. And really just the emotion and I think meaningfulness that you've shared with us today. So with that, we can turn to our next presenter. Sophia Scott is a student in the Department of Biomedical Science. Her expected graduation is spring of 2023. As she actually mentioned, she is a first responder. She's been a medical assistant, emergency medical technician, both here in the Akron area as well as in Canton, where she grew up. And her presentation is titled Starting a Nonprofit University of Akron Student-Run Reproductive Health Clinic. Sophia, if you'd like to share your screen and begin.
Yes, let me share for you. My computer's running a little bit slow today, so please be patient with me. Okay, am I in presenting mode?
I can still see your the title bar, and it's loading.
Just loading.
So you don't seem to be in presenting mode yet.
I can see.
Okay.
Oh,
Now are we good?
I still see loading.
Okay.
it put on there for a second.
Okay. I have it on presenter screen for me.
Okay.
Can you see it like this?
There it is.
I can
Okay.
see it there.
That's weird because that's not presenter mode for me. So, but that's fine.
It's not presenter mode for us either, but yeah, it's totally fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. I mean, this is
Life online.
These are the virtual things that we expect at this point. So it's totally fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good morning. Like you said, my name is Sophia Scott, and I am here to critique the state of Akron's reproductive health care and propose a possible solution. I am going to start off by discussing my connection to Akron healthcare and follow up by talking about some of the reproductive health issues in Akron, and then finish off by discussing a proposal for the University of Akron student-run clinic. First off, my connection to Akron's healthcare. So I am a pre-med student at the University of Akron with a focus on healthcare. I worked as an EMT in Canton, and I am currently a medical assistant at Akron Children's in the pulmonary department. I volunteered at a hospice company in Akron, and I lived in the greater Akron area my entire life. I truly love it here, but it is important to critique our community in order to grow in a positive direction. That is why I will be critiquing the state of reproductive health care in Akron. The women of Akron are facing preventable reproductive problems. Unsafe abortions, teen pregnancies, and STDs can be greatly reduced by contraception and comprehensive sex education. Maternal and infant mortality rates in Akron need to be lowered in low-income areas. In low-income areas, access and education of important prenatal care is limited. Akron's high poverty rate exacerbates gender inequality in the city. Women in Akron who are of lower socioeconomic status have a lack of control over their personal autonomy due to limited access to reproductive health care. To allow more women to have greater reproductive justice, another nonprofit reproductive clinic is needed in Akron. An innovative clinic run by the University of Akron students will allow more women in the city to learn how to be in better control of their reproductive health care, and they'll be given the tools to do so. Starting off with sexually transmitted diseases. According to the Ohio Department of Health in 2018, Ohio had 3,446 cases of chlamydia, 1,119 cases of gonorrhea, and 71 cases of syphilis. Ohio had 903 new cases of HIV. I apologize. The chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis were all for only in Summit County. HIV is for Ohio. Moving on, Ohio is a level 3 abstinence-only education state. This means that in Ohio high schools and below, that marriage only, that no sex until marriage is taught. There's a clear positive correlation between the degree of abstinence-only sex education and teen pregnancy rates. The states with the strictest form of abstinence-only sex education, including Ohio, have an average teen pregnancy rate of 73.24 pregnancies per 1,000 teen girls. A reliable source of comprehensive sex education for a variety of ages and access to affordable birth control is needed in Ohio to slow the rate of teen pregnancy. Another problem exacerbated by limited sex education and effective birth control options is abortion. Barriers to safe abortions are restrictive laws, limited availability, high cost, stigma, and unnecessary requirements. Low socioeconomic status can limit the time available to get an abortion and access to transportation. Akron's high poverty rate puts many women at risk for needing an abortion and at risk for not having access to one. Safe and unsafe abortions, as well as unwanted pregnancies, increase when there is limited access to contraception and sex education. In order to reduce unsafe abortions, which are very dangerous for the mother and can be fatal, greater access to safe abortion is also needed, in addition to birth control and sex education. Moving on to maternal mortality, women in Akron are dying from preventable pregnancy-related complications. 57% of pregnancy-related deaths from 2012 to 2019 in Ohio were thought to be preventable. Black pregnant women died at a rate of 2.5 times more than pregnant white women in Ohio from 2008 to 2016. Maternal mortality in Akron can be caused by untreated eclampsia and preeclampsia, inadequate nutrition, and other complications of birth. Many issues during pregnancy and birth can be prevented with regular prenatal appointments, education, access to a healthy lifestyle, and a safe birthing experience. In addition to lowering the overall maternal mortality rate in Akron, ensuring the physicians in Akron listen to women of color and believe their pain and concerns are valid is also a very important step towards lowering Black maternal mortality rate. Prenatal appointments are important to assess potential risks and to keep the mother and fetus healthy. In Ohio, 1 in 17 infants are born to a woman who receives no or late prenatal care. Some of the barriers to accessing prenatal care is negative attitude towards healthcare, a long wait for service costs, lack of transportation, and social and cultural exclusion. By chipping away at these problems in Akron, access to adequate prenatal care for more women will increase. Another clinic that offers prenatal care will allow women who normally would not have access to this service to have a safer pregnancy. Ohio has the 11th highest infant mortality rate and the second highest Black infant mortality rate. Prenatal care, education, and adequate resources for new families are essential to lowering this alarming mortality rate. Women of color face institutionalized and interpersonal racism, which can cause many barriers to having a successful pregnancy, such as poverty, lack of time, transportation and housing, and medical professionals not listening to women of color. These factors negatively affect mental health, which can lead to higher rates of infant mortality. In Summit County, the infant mortality rate is 3.2 times greater for Black infants. 1 in 7 women experience postpartum depression. Some risks for postpartum depression are financial or employment problems, isolation, lack of support, first-time mothers, older mothers, younger mothers, and stress involved in caring for a newborn. Many women in Akron face these issues and are at risk for postpartum depression, but there are limited places to go for those financially struggling. Another facility that offers emotional support and affordable healthcare for the women at risk for postpartum depression is needed in Akron. Now I will move on to the proposal for a University of Akron student-run reproductive clinic to help limit some of these problems that I previously discussed. The University of Akron has a commitment to caring for the city of Akron, so a clear next step the university needs to take is starting a reproductive clinic. Some of the goals of the University of Akron are to resurrect the local economy, train students in diverse disciplines, and offer service projects for diverse groups of learners. All of these goals can be met with a student-run clinic at the University of Akron. The purpose of the clinic is to advance women's choices, reproductive education, reproductive health, and infant and fetal health in Akron. Another goal of the clinic is to expose the University of Akron students to diverse clinical experience. Students will have the capability to lead and help the large underserved population in Akron. The students in the College of Health Professionals could improve lives by learning under the supervision of licensed professionals, which increases the number of people able to offer care at a clinic for a low cost. A few employees benefit from gainful employment, and students and volunteers benefit from education and service. Beyond health professionals, all students at the University of Akron can work and volunteer at a clinic. There are many diverse positions that can be done at a clinic. For example, business students can run the finances and marketing. Psychology students can work with patients who suffer from postpartum depression. Education students can hold classes. The possibilities for students in community advancement are endless. Students will have the opportunity to gain hands-on experience, serve their community, and lead their peers. In conclusion, the University of Akron needs to step up to help the people of Akron who are falling through the cracks. A student-run nonprofit reproductive clinic is the perfect next step the university needs to take to care for the most vulnerable people in our community. A nonprofit reproductive clinic affiliated with the University of Akron advances students' career goals and affords women in the community greater reproductive justice. Here are my resources, and I can share them with anyone who is interested. And thank you for letting me present.
Thank you, Sophia. That was nice, and I want to commend you not just for identifying an issue in the community, but also for putting forward a thoughtful way of responding to that issue. I think it's so easy today to point fingers and to say, this is wrong, that is wrong, you're wrong, but to actually propose a solution while you identify a problem, I think is particularly noteworthy. So, like I said, I'd like to commend you on that in particular. Are there questions and comments from the audience? Heather.
Yes, thank you, Sophia. I appreciate your proposal, and I think it's we absolutely do need to have a student clinic for just this reason. I'd love to suggest an idea that might help. I think representation is essential, especially the demographics you're talking about. I think you and the other students who are interested in helping you should apply some pressure to your department to recruit and maintain professors of color in the Health Professions College. There are very few administrators and professors in the University of Akron of color at all. But the sooner that they are working inside the University of Akron, the better fruit your student clinic will bear. I think also making some effort to recruit students of color to the nursing field, to the nursing major, or any of the health majors is a really worthy project. Again, if you're out in 8 years, that's that many more people who are able to approach this cause and be boots on the ground for the next batch of people trying to have babies or trying not to have babies or trying to have reproductive health issues addressed in this community. So I think if you start that now, you're planting some really great seeds for the future generations. Thank you for such intentional work. It's really important stuff.
Thank you. And I completely agree. I don't think that the faculty at the University of Akron and even the students represents how diverse Akron is as a whole, and it really should.
Yeah. Well, and the other factor, and I'll stop talking, but the other factor is so often you talk about that disconnect between the doctors and the patients, right? Patients of color in particular. What so often that is born of, how to say this kindly, I think it would be greatly fixed by making sure that the stereotypes are combated and withdrawn, right? So filling those gaps can only help.
Thank you.
Jackson.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I had some sales training, and one of the big things that they stress for any kind of proposal or pitch similar to what you were doing is like the why change and why now, because the status quo is going to be your hardest enemy to overcome. And I thought you did a very good job at signifying the importance of why the situation needs to change, and it needs to change now, especially with some of the statistics and data that you shared and presented it pretty clearly. I know I was surprised to see that Ohio's 11th highest in infant mortality and second highest for specifically Black infant mortality rate. So that was pretty shocking to me. And along with other things that you presented, I think you did a very convincing case for why the situation needs to change and why it needs to change now.
Thank you so much.
Shaughness, I think you had your hand up next.
Yes, thank you so much, Sophia. I thought, to Dane's point, you did a really good job of not just putting your finger on the problem, which is a really significant problem in the community, but also on the solution. And I think so often we kind of think in terms of, what the existing capacity or how can we improve the programs that existing institutions are working on. And, this is really a great idea that I really like in terms of not only increasing the capacity to deal with these issues, but also really giving university students an opportunity to kind of have experiential learning, but also see people's humanity who they might not otherwise see, and to Heather's point, kind of these are folks who can be evangelists then when they are nurses at SUMA or general or what have you. And so, I'd like to talk to you more about this. We have a health equity coordinator for the city of Akron who's really focused on infant mortality and maternal mortality. So I think this is something where there's a lot of opportunity, but really just, and then finally wanted to commend you for really kind of unflinchingly acknowledging the role that systemic racism plays in it, in terms of, how people don't necessarily, again, see people's humanity. And I think that really centering that it's not comfortable to talk about, but it is really important.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm only 19, about to turn 20, so working in healthcare for about 2 years now has really opened my eyes to a lot of racism from different healthcare providers and just how much both Canton and Akron, but I spend more of my time in Akron, truly needs some more reproductive healthcare. So I'm glad I get to share that very alarming information to see what we can do next.
Thank you. John.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I really appreciated the presentation, and I just wanted to share a few things, thoughts that I had as you presented. So the first thing that popped into my mind are the haters. There will be people who won't like a lot of what you are proposing to do. You have to be ready. But there actually is, I haven't seen this myself, but there was a really sort of historic moment that happened at the University of Notre Dame, which is a Catholic university where there's very strong opposition on, not among all Catholics and not among all Catholics at Notre Dame, but many people, a opposition to abortion, to discussing it, to, you know, anything, making it available, any of that, educating people about it as an option, all of these things. And Barack Obama went to Notre Dame and he gave a talk there that people have told me about, and I got to dredge this up on YouTube, where he said, we all share the same goal. And that is that we all, I believe, want to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies. We might have different ways that we wish to go about that. That's some common ground. We all know that women aren't always in control of the conditions that they're placed under, and that's something where we have common ground. And so to the extent that you, and I think in your presentation you showed this, you have a very inclusive approach where you might encounter some people who some parts of the messaging they will not like. But for those people, it's even possible, or should be possible, to find common ground for the parts of the messaging where they could get on board. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is the power of not just hate, but indifference. That there will be people who think, well, this doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect me directly, or they won't even care. And that in some ways is even worse. You know, treating people like they don't matter is something that's really, if once you get attuned to the idea that some people are just ignored as if they're not even present, you just see it going on all the time. And I think that's some of the healthcare issues with African Americans might fall into that category. And so overcoming indifference and overcoming hate are two different aspects of what this might, what you might face, or other people carrying this forward might face, and being ready for those things. And finally, I live not very far from, and I got both of my COVID shots at the free clinic in Cleveland. Free clinic was started in the 70s, I believe. And it's really very successful. And in fact, it garnered more and more and more support. Initially, it had some boosters. It had some people who were volunteering. They were medical students. And over time, it really became a thing. I mean, it really took off. And it was because, you know, there were people carrying it through the lean times. And eventually, it's really valued. And I would say, many people like me got free, got vaccinated there. And we read, when we were there were placards about the history of it and everything. So, you know, moving forward with something like this, it really could be a very positive long-term thing for Akron. And so I think it's a really great suggestion. And I hope that you, and you shouldn't have to do it alone. It's about finding other people who can, you know, Shamus has offered some support with the person in the city who's working on it, finding other students to work on it. The Excel Center might be a venue for getting some students who would want to try it out as a pilot and so forth. So I think it's really great what you're doing. I really do. But just being ready for indifference, opposition, and these kinds of things is an important part of your strategy and your coalition building that would have to happen.
Thank you so much. That was very thoughtful response.
Matea.
Yeah, hi. My camera's off. I'm a little bit camera shy. I just want to say thank you for bringing light to women's health issues and fertility issues. It's also a very taboo subject. Infertility runs in my family. My mom had issues. She had 4 miscarriages before she had me, and she also suffered from preeclampsia when my sister was born. And she had really hard pregnancies. And the other women in my family have also have issues. And my studies in human diversity and in political science have been based off of offering birth control to women in third world countries instead of having like the legislature that says the 1-child rule or no abortion and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you for this.
Yes, thank you. There's endless reproductive issues, I feel like, all around the world. So it was hard to narrow it down to Akron and what I found to be the most critical issues at the time. But infertility is also a huge issue going on.
Hi, Sandy, go ahead.
Sorry, had to unmute there. I wanted to say how much I enjoyed your presentation, and just a thought, having been involved in many things in the community over the years, if you've not made a connection to Planned Parenthood, which is on West Exchange Street, I recommend that you do contact them, because it's a wonderful source of information and connections within the reproductive community. Very, very talented people there, and a very diverse community. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Planned Parenthood is absolutely amazing. We will, if I could ever hopefully get this off the ground, would be to work in conjunction with them and what can we do together and for students.
Heather.
I just want to add one more quick suggestion. I don't know if you saw it, Sophia, but just this week, the Akron Public Schools has hired their first ever woman of color superintendent. And I know that they don't set curriculum, that's done at the state level and, you know, however else that works. But the Akron Public Schools has a great system called learning communities, and it sort of determines, you know, we used to call it like vocational school. That's not exactly the same thing, but it sort of determines maybe what paths people will take as they head toward college and or other fields. And I think the clinic is, like I said, a great idea, but what you might also try to do to build up that field of representation that you're looking for is talk to the Akron Public Schools and see if you can get into the high schools, maybe even middle schools, and talk to students that show good marks in science and things like that, so that you can urge them to go into these fields. This is a great time, especially with the change of the guard at the top and those learning communities. They're built into pods on purpose for something just like this. I will do anything I can to help you make those connections. I know a few people here and there, but if you want to talk further, we can do that. I'm always open to try to help get good ideas off the ground.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely be reaching out to you, Heather, and you, Shamus, as well. You guys are very, very helpful. Thank you so much.
Hannah?
I just wanted to say I thought your presentation was really good. I feel like kind of those women's rights issues are so taboo, even like in 2021, when it really shouldn't be. And, you know, that racial aspect is also still playing a part, which is, you know, very sad. But yeah, I think it's a really great idea. And I also have a professor who, you know, might be interested in, you know, kind of helping you out with that. So, you know, if you want any connections, just let me know.
Thank you. I might just be sending out a mass email to all of you later today.
Perfect. Send away. Are there any other questions or comments? Well, Sophia, thank you again. As at least for me personally, as I mentioned, I thought it was really nice that not only did you identify a problem, but you really focused on a way of combating that problem. So thank you for your submission, and more importantly for your thoughtful commentary on this. So with that, I think we will turn to our last presenter. see. Are you seeing my screen yet? Okay, good. So Hannah Curtis, she is a dual major, history and anthropology, and her submission is titled Retrospective Reformation. Hannah?
Okay, sorry. I have to figure out where the share screen button is. It's different in like everyone. Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna try and put it in present mode. Can everyone see it?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, so I decided to do my presentation on reforming our police system. It's definitely been a hot topic within the last few months, especially, but it's something that's always kind of been around, especially in people of color. All right, so basically, why do we need police reform? So kind of just looking back over, even in the last year, these cases that have caused these large outrages, such as, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, who were both, they both lost their lives at the hands of police officers. They're just two examples of so many that have happened in the past year. And, over the years, we know there are more. So this has led to the increased calls for reform in the police departments all over the country. So the system we use in the United States is less advanced than the ones others around the world. It's become fairly outdated and needs to be redone, I believe, from the ground up at this point, with a better emphasis on education and continued training. And then to the left, we have just picture of protesters via the BBC website. All right, there we go. Okay, so I want to start with just kind of outlining what it takes to become a police officer. So on the left, this is actually a screen snip from a website that gave the requirements for Akron, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus. I just use Akron's because, this is where we are, but there are different requirements in different departments. So as you can see, the minimum eligibility requirements, you have to have a high school diploma, be 21, meet the vision and hearing, have a driver's license, and then have no felonies. After that, you do have to, pass your exams, your background check, all that stuff, and then you go to police academy if you pass all of that. So this is kind of where the problem comes in. So police academies, it does differ, but usually they last less than 6 months in most cases, and then officers are sent onto the street with training officers. So kind of to put that into perspective, and this has been a comparison a lot of people have used. To be a barber in the state of Ohio, you need 1,800 hours of training, and that's, to cut hair. And then for police officers, they generally only have about 737, which is drastically different. And we would expect the officers to be higher because, we trust them to protect us. So continued education is another part of the story, obviously. So this varies from department to department and state to state, kind of what they're required to do in terms of continued education and how they are to do that. Sometimes it's online formats where you go to an online class and you might do a little quiz. Sometimes it's in person. So in Ohio and many, many other states, it's based solely on if there is money in the budget to do continued education. So according to a report from 2020, Ohio has not had the money to give officers this continued training since 2017. That is a lot of years without, kind of updating what they should be doing in different circumstances, especially now when times are really changing. Okay, so starting from the ground up. Throughout this, I'm going to give examples of what other countries are doing with their police forces, as kind of like options of things we could do here that, would help keep police officers safe as well as the general public. So countries around the world have different ways of managing police officers who may not have, the best intentions. To the left, you can see a picture of a map, the Republic of Georgia. So it's kind of in the Middle East region in the Caucasus Mountains. It was one of the most corrupt places in the world. So their police force often took bribes, and the general population just did not trust them. So in 2004, the new government came in and they decided to abolish their entire police force. I believe this was 33,000 officers. So they kind of, got them all out. And then they took 3 years to hire a smaller and better trained police force. They have imposed, stricter rules on if you are caught taking a bribe, for example, you're done. So they have made their police officers less corrupt, and now the public trusts them a lot more. Camden, New Jersey did a very similar thing. It's a little closer to home. In 2013, their homicide rate was rising like exponentially, and they couldn't afford to employ more police officers to deal with this problem. To kind of combat that, they laid off all their officers and then doubled the size of their police force by paying the better trained officers reduced wages. So they got more people who were better trained, and they just paid them a little less. So this training focused especially on de-escalation of tense situations. And since then, their violent crime has fallen by 42%. Okay, changing education is another option. In other countries, the education required to become a police officer is drastically different from what we have here. So Germany requires their officers that have at least 2.5 or up to 4 years of schooling and training before they can become a police officer and kind of go out on the streets. They can also get a bachelor's or master's degree in policing as, part of their training. It's not required, but they can do that instead. So they learn just a variety of things, including these de-escalation techniques, as well as how to respond to domestic violence. And I feel like most importantly is how to disarm someone with a weapon without, drawing your weapon on them. Finland and Denmark are also extremely limited in what they can do as police officers. So if at all possible, unless it is a life or death situation for either a suspect, a victim, or an officer, they must gain permission from their supervisors before they shoot their guns off. In Spain, officers have to shoot off warning shots and give verbal warnings. So physical restraints are also extremely limited in other countries. The chokehold that was used to subdue George Floyd is actually outlawed in many countries, and now states are kind of doing the same thing and saying, that is not allowed. The use of guns is also less necessary in Europe because they have more gun control laws. That is a completely, separate topic that you could get into. But I thought it was very interesting. In England and Wales and Scotland, most police officers don't even carry guns unless they're in the larger cities because there's really no need. I have been to Europe many times, and, I've seen the different officers. The whole demeanor is, just very different from the United States. Centralization is, I think, would be a very good way to kind of reform our police. So if it was centralized, like in England and Wales, they have the Queen's Inspector of Constabulary. I don't think I pronounced that right, and I am so sorry. But he goes to each police station basically and makes sure they're following the rules and regulations that are set forth. If not, they lose their funding. So this makes sure that all officers and departments have specific training curriculum. So it makes it easier to know when someone's doing something that's not quite right. The College of Policing also has a record of officers who were dismissed so they weren't hired again. This has come up in the United States a lot. An officer who was dismissed for, excessive violence or something can just go to another department and be hired again. This allows the people who are, not doing the right thing to continually be in this kind of position of power. Okay. So another one that has been called for a lot in the United States is kind of the defunding of police. So basically, you're using the funds that would go to police and giving them to other public services that would help people. So other countries do this as well. So Sweden has mental health units who are made of doctors and paramedics or officers who have had special training. So more recently, health professionals have gone to the streets themselves so police can focus on what they're trained for. These health professionals, for example, know how to deal with someone who is mentally ill, who might be having an episode. So they know how to deal with that. Well, something like that may stress out police officers who don't have the same training as a health professional would have. In Scotland, paramedics and doctors go around the country to schools to kind of scare away kids from violence by describing knife fight wounds, which sounds completely scary if you were a little kid and, you had to see this. So they kind of do it by educating children on, violence is not the right answer, basically. So they also have a program where former offenders will go to ER rooms looking for kind of those teachable moments. So if someone, was in a knife fight or something, Scotland has very strict gun rules, so knives are a bigger problem. But they look for that teachable moment so they can help kind of educate that person and get them away from the path they're following. So another program was instituted to help offenders get back in the workforce, and then they have mentors to help them stay on track. So by getting back in the workforce, they're not going to commit these crimes or, not rely on violence to get food or money or whatever they might be trying to get. So the last kind of thing I want to talk about in regards to the US and other countries is the incarceration rates. So on the left, if you look at that graph, it says 1 out of 5 prisoners in the world is incarcerated by the US. So we have 2.3 million people incarcerated. The second highest would be China with 1.6 million. So according to a study done in January of 2020, that's 0.7% of the United States population is currently incarcerated, which is incredibly high in terms, if you think about how that's almost one person out of 100, which is crazy, especially compared to the rest of the world. So Switzerland has actually instituted shorter prison sentences to try and discourage people from committing the same crimes. They are also trying to get a program where offenders can have like work passes for the day so they don't lose their job and can, kind of get back on their feet when they're released from prison. In Finland, they are doing kind of the same thing, but with homelessness, which again is a problem in most large countries. So oftentimes people who are released from prison face a crisis in the form of, it's harder to get work now, it's harder to get a home. So this leads them to commit the same crimes and spend more time in prison. Finland's programs provide support for released prisoners to help them find homes and jobs. It also helps them deal with substance abuse, which is oftentimes a large problem in the homeless community. So this has led Finland to actually become the only country in Europe where the homelessness rate is dropping. Okay, so why does this all matter? I will go to this link in just 1 second, but it all matters because police shootings and, this kind of violence that we think of now is not a new phenomenon. It's always happened. It's just kind of getting more in the light now. So there's more and more countries are looking to the United States with confusion. Like, how are we letting this happen? So better training and education is needed to keep people safe. Other countries have figured out ways to keep officers and the public safe, and we should look for them to guidance. So I will leave you with one example of why better education and continued education really matters. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the story of Dante Wright, who was killed on April 11th in 2021 by Officer Kimberly Potter in Minnesota. So Mr. Wright did try to resist arrest, but the problem comes when Officer Potter went to tase him, but pulled her gun and shot him instead. This resulted in his death. So the problem here is she mixed up her taser and her pistol, which are very different in size and weight. So this is absolutely unacceptable. With better education and continued education, things like this might not happen. So actually, hopefully this will work. I'm going to click on this link. Okay, can you all see the Washington Post website?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at this graph in the middle, it shows the amount of shootings, the total shootings, and then the months. So 2021, we are at 292. When I submitted my paper, it was at 275. So that is obviously a lot. You know, we're not even halfway through the year. Okay, sorry, go back there. But yeah, the solutions are hard, and it's hard to know what would work best for our country because we are so much larger than some of the European countries. But I believe we should be looking to them for the answers, and reform is definitely needed to keep citizens safe as well as officers safe. Yeah, and on one last note, I'm not, doing this presentation to say, the police are bad. It's just, it needs reformed. It's a little outdated, and, we must keep growing as a country. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And again, I'm incredibly impressed by the thoughtfulness that goes into not simply identifying a problem, but also trying to develop solutions for the problem. So we have a number of hands. Sandy, is your hand up new, or is that from old? Okay. Shamus.
Thank you. Hannah, that was really great. And, one of the things that I really appreciated is that, the sophistication of the problems that you identified is really top notch. I spent most of the last year on city council trying to work on policing. And a lot of those things are things that it took me months to kind of figure out, especially that point about training, continuing education. It is unbelievable that the state of Ohio mandates so little training. I think they did 20 hours in 2020, but in all the previous years and this year, there's no mandated number. And that's just incredible and you put it into perspective really well. I really like that you look at other countries. It's so funny because I've spent a lot of the last year looking at other cities, right? And look, what do they do in Denver? What do they do in Chicago? What do they do in Rochester? But it's such a good point that if we're really going to reimagine this, there's no reason why we can't look beyond our country. And I think particularly I would challenge you just a little bit that, there's a lot of things that we can change in the law, but there's so much that needs to change in terms of culture. And you touched on this a little bit, but it really is about how we view what the job is. Why don't we have a metric be how the community feels about their safety, how they feel about the police? Why isn't that something that we're spending time measuring? And it goes from a really cultural and perspective shift in what we need. But I think that, but really, really well done.
Thank you.
Sorry, muted. John.
Hannah, thanks very much. There were a couple things that I wanted to say, just thinking about this from the perspective of a professor at a university. And so one is that my department, I'm in the philosophy department, we have a certificate in law enforcement ethics that when we initially rolled it out, it's entirely online right now. I actually don't like that aspect of it, but it does improve the accessibility of it. I'd like to also have an in-person version of it. But so there are things that the university can do, and I think that the sort of the next step for us in our certificate, or anything that the university as a whole decides to do, is to really try and focus on what, not just the right and wrong of different policing practices, but really reflection on what the aims are. This follows up on what Shamus was saying, what the goals are of policing and how to achieve those goals. Is very important. I mean, anytime somebody is shot by a police officer, the first thing that comes to mind is, what would have happened if that person would have just been allowed to get away? Would they have been a threat to others? Would they have just run away because they themselves are fleeing for their own lives? What exactly it would be the consequence of them not being shot? Is something that often occurs to me. The other thing, just as somebody at a university, is that research is very important. And there are aspects of gun violence that just by federal law cannot be treated as public health. You can't get a grant from public health agencies to study the problem of gun violence. And so, again, that's another thing where it's really a matter of finding the will to reclassify something as a public health problem and find what's the best way, just the same way that we're looking to prevent many things. We're looking to prevent, sexually transmitted diseases or reduce their rate and so forth. We need to figure out what works and then build that into the policing. So, as a student at a university and as faculty as a university, we have a role that we can play in bringing about some of the reforms that you're talking about, and even just studying or reflecting on what we want as a society out of policing. So I really think it's great that in this particular context, you brought those issues forward, because we are an example of an institution that can help with that.
Thank you, John. Sophia.
Your presentation was really good. Just kind of out of curiosity, I was wondering your opinion on the decriminalization of drugs and how that could affect police reform.
I'm not really sure. I think the decriminalization of drugs would definitely help with our incarceration rate. Excuse me, sorry. Sorry, I'm not really sure. I think it would be good. I know private prisons are a whole nother beast to tackle kind of within the same thing. So I think we definitely need more reform in that as well. Because, our prisons are filling up, and, it's not a great thing to do. But yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like I can't answer it very well.
I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No, but I think, Hannah, as you mentioned, right? I mean, obviously those are related problems, but yeah, prison reform is an entirely different. Well, it's not entirely different, but it's a huge issue as well, and one that can be thought of as in some sense separated from police reform. Heather Pollock. Heather, are you there?
Yep, I was muted. I'll try to be brief. We all know that's not my long suit, but Hannah, I started out, I took a screenshot of your statistic with the 737 hours and the 1,800 hours for a hairdresser. That's staggering. And that's really great stuff, because so often these arguments are emotional and nobody backs them up with logical stuff that says, look, how can you argue with this, right? Like, it would be really hard for you to kill somebody with a haircut, right? So obviously you need more training for the police officer one than the haircut one, right? So thank you for offering those. I think those are really good footholds for going further. A couple of thoughts. I have about 4 different places I want you to present this thing. One of them is with the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Charles Brown, who is sort of a pal of mine. Part of the reason why, again, I'll try to be quick. In my fear class, I asked him to help me find some police officers to talk about the sustained and generational fear of persons of color and police, right? And he put me in touch with 2 police officers. Both turned out to be police officers of color themselves. And so this was a fascinating Zoom meeting, right? Presentation. But during that time, both Charles and the officers talked about how interested they are in working with students and working on our understanding of police and communicating correctly and all this kind of stuff. So if you don't mind, I'd like to make that introduction. Maybe we could talk to him. I just sent you an article about New Jersey and their police reform in Newark, which I think you'll like. I just emailed it to you. And then there was one other thing. Oh, I was going to say one of the police officers that came to for that presentation, he explained that at a different police force, not Akron, but before his time at Akron, their diversity training, right, consisted of getting all the officers in the squad to watch Boys in the Hood. And that was it. And so I appreciate, I know, right? I just saw John's face that it's that, yeah. So I really appreciate your look at the idea of training for all of it, not just, the racial piece, but just the idea that these people that we expect to protect and serve might not even have enough training to know the difference between a taser and a pistol. And so I think that's extraordinarily important. Thank you for looking into this, and I'll contact you about those other things.
Yes, for
Thank
sure.
you, Heather.
Yeah.
The whole training thing, I think, is super important, and I think it's important to recognize that a lot of the situations that the police officers face are hopefully once in a lifetime. So if you received training in the academy about what to do in this situation, but then you don't experience that situation for 12 to 15 years, what training, what good is the training? And so, it's almost like it doesn't necessarily need to be training, it needs to be practice.
Yes.
Right? Can they continually practice being a police officer? And again, because these situations are, again, hopefully once in a lifetime, hopefully none in a lifetime, right? But they're extremely rare. But we need to recognize how serious they are, and that it's that sort of continuous practice, maybe is just a good way of saying it, that I think can be so valuable and clearly missing. Thomas.
Hi, Hannah. A few comments. First off, wonderful presentation. This is a topic I hold near and dear to my heart. Last summer, I interviewed one of the University of Akron police officers, just trying to understand it from their perspective as well. As Shamas mentioned earlier, I think there is partially a culture problem, both with the police and I think with us as students, as academics. When the messaging is all cops are bastards and defund the police, it makes it very hard to connect with the police officers to say, hey, we want to see positive change when they're hearing those messages and being looked at really poorly. Listen, I don't believe all cops are bastards, but there are some that are bad and do bad things. And I think the continued education is a big thing. But when people are calling for defund the police, how do you get more training, as you mentioned, when there isn't a budget to do it? So just with my discussion with her, I presented like an idea of, at least in our community, trying to change it, of why can't we get together with the police officers and the students or the people who live in Akron and talk about these issues? Because I think if you know a police officer and you know them face to face, you may not be as scared. And I think that fear of the unknown is a big issue. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I would definitely agree. I think it's very important to kind of get to know what from the police officer's perspective. Oh my goodness, I cannot talk. I think it's important to get to know your community and what their needs are and kind of what it's made up of. And I think it's important for the community to get to know those police officers because, you know, they're the ones with a gun. So it's easy to be scared of them. I know one moment stands out to me in particular. Over the summer, my family and I went to a protest in Worcester, Ohio, because we're from Wayne County, that was held by the local NAACP community. It was a really great protest, and the police, you know, they made sure everyone was safe. You know, it wasn't kind of a fear between groups. It was working together to kind of keep each other safe. And I think that's so important, especially, you know, in bigger cities where you're not going to see, you know, you're not going to know your police officer. You're not going to, you know, go to school with his kids and stuff like that. I think it's so important to kind of develop that bond between the community and, you know, all public servants, I think.
Just as a quick last aside, some of the most uplifting videos that I saw over the last summer were when the police wanted to walk with the protesters, wanted to say, listen, we don't like this injustice. We want to walk with you. We want to protest these horrible things. But yeah, there's so many aspects of the problem, as you mentioned, the prisons, the war on drugs. So it's a very big topic, and I'm glad that you're bringing it to light.
Matea.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for your presentation. As a current member of a federal law enforcement intern and working with a bunch of people who are in law enforcement, I will promise you that we do not all want to hurt you. And no one, I can promise you also that no one hopes to pick up their weapon. And I believe, I'm sorry, I forget the person who spoke before me, I forget your name, Thomas. I agree that fear needs to be reduced between both parties. So, thank you.
Well, thank you again, and in particular, thank you for all three presentations. You know, this was wonderful, right? There was a lot of good discussion, thoughtful comments, and I would like to congratulate all of our students for the wonderful job they did today. Like I said, this is one of my favorite events of the year, and you can probably see why. So, you know, I think I'll close and I'll once again say thank you to Mark and Sandy Auburn for really making this possible. It is a wonderful testament to the memory of Ben, and I have no doubt that were he here with us today, he would be presenting and asking questions and really just engaging with every single one of us. So again, thank you for the wonderful support that you've given to our students and the University of Akron as well over countless years. You know, as Mark said, he grew up at the University of Akron as part of the University of Akron family. And it's wonderful to see that you're still here with the University of Akron family. So I'd like to thank our judges. They have a tough job ahead of them. For a little bit of scheduling details, we will announce the winner on Monday. In the past, when we did this live, right, our judges went and sequestered themselves away and came up with a decision while we ate Zippy cookies. But I know. But since I can't give you Zippy cookies, I don't feel like it's fair to make you wait. Or at least, you know, wait on the call. So instead, I'll make you wait until Monday, I guess. But again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to everybody and make sure that I can find a time when it's convenient for everybody. But probably Monday afternoon at some point, perhaps late morning. Again, our judges will deliberate and talk and come to a decision, and then we'll make the announcement then. So please look out for an email in the next half an hour or so, asking about your schedule for Monday. With that, I'll open it up to any last questions or comments. If anyone would like to say something, Mark, Sandy, if you'd like to close us out, now's the chance. Sandy, go ahead, please.
I'd just like to say thanks to the students who took the time to do the extra work to participate in this event. We appreciate it. And thanks to the judges for taking time at those of you who are faculty at a very busy time of year to participate in this, and to Shamus for joining us and providing your expertise and interest. We appreciate it very much.
Heather, you have your hand up.
On the short end, I was just wondering if the judges could stay after for like 30 seconds after everybody else goes, if that's allowed. But no big deal if you can't. And then to Mark and Sandy, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's magnanimous of you to use your own loss to further Ben's passion and to share it, to keep the conversations going with people that you recognize a bit of him in. So I appreciate that in both of you, and Dane and John for perpetuating this all these years. I'm so glad to be a part of it. To the students, thank you so much for raising your voices. It's the most important thing we can do at this age and at college. So please don't stop doing that no matter who wins the Ben Award. Please keep doing that part. Thank you.
Absolutely. All sentiments that are absolutely spot on. So I think with that, I will close our award symposium. Again, I'd like to thank all of our visitors, students, judges, and the Auburns. Please take care. Wash your hands. Wear your masks. Even if you're vaccinated, don't go around licking things. Just not a good idea. But please stay safe, and we will all see you later. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Yes, thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.